Hello, and welcome to Sapporo Gakuen University's Community College, Global Issues in English. And today's topic is plastics. Before we begin, I recommend that you visit this site where you can find some vocabulary support and some language exercises which will help you with the topic. And again, before we start the talk, I'd like you just to look around you now. What can you see that is made of plastic? For example, in my case, my glasses here are made of plastic. My clothes contain some plastic. I'm using a computer and a keyboard made of plastic. My microphone is made of plastic. The camera is made of plastic. So much of what is around us is made of plastic. And number two, think about your home or your office. What things are made of plastic? I'm sure you can think of many, many things. Number three, check your garbage. How much of it is made of plastic? How much plastic have you thrown away today? Some things to think about. How did people live without plastic? Now, this photograph is probably from the 1950s, perhaps when you were a child, or when your parents were a child, or when your grandparents were young. They lived in houses with no plastic. Plastic is really a very modern product, and these people seem to be very happy without any plastic in their lives at all. So what has changed? Well, one thing that has changed, we can see, is the amount of plastic in the world. So starting in about 1950, you can see down here, there were about 2.3 million tons of plastic produced every year. And then up in 2015, we have this huge, huge jump up to 448 million tons of plastic, of different types of plastic, which we will look at later. So you can see a big jump, and especially when we entered the 21st century, the amount of plastic doubled very, very quickly. Where is plastic made? We can see from this that about 30% of plastic is made in China, about 18% in NAFTA. This is North America, the United States, Canada, and Mexico. In other parts of Asia, and Japan produces about 4% of the world's plastic. And who uses the plastic? The consumption of plastic, again, China is the number one country. Again, the same pattern, the USA is the number two. And then in Europe, we can see some more. And Japan here, using quite a lot of plastic as well. And we can see, again, that it is the rich countries, these countries, the USA, Canada, Mexico, Western Europe, and Japan, that are very much in the top area. And the poorer countries of the world use much less plastic than we do. And how much do we consume? This is per person. So for each person in the world, we can see from 1980, 2005, 2015, North Americans use the most plastic. One person will use 139 kilograms of plastic in 1 year in North America. Western Europe, 136. And here's Japan, number three. Each Japanese person will use about 108 kilograms of plastic every year. And when we go down to the world total, we can see that it's much more than the world average, which is only about 45 kilograms per year. And here's some information about plastic. Around the world, 1 million plastic drinking bottles are bought every minute. So one of these bottles every minute is bought somewhere. 1 million of these every year is bought around the world, somewhere in the world. In 2016, 480 billion plastic bottles were produced. 110 billion of these were produced by Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola produces about 25% of all plastic bottles in the world. Single-use plastic. 5 trillion of these single-use plastic bags are used worldwide every year. Single-use means we use it once and then we throw it away. And then we're moving down, we can see between 40 and 50% of all plastic produced is designed to be used only once and thrown away. And researchers estimate that more than 8.3 billion tons of plastic has been produced since the 1950s. So we're producing a lot of plastic, and a lot of it is used for just one single use. Here's a quiz. Of all the plastic produced in the world until now, how much has been recycled? Do you think it's about 9%, about 29%, or about 49%? The answer is 9%. Only 9% of the plastic that has been produced since the beginning of the 1950s has been recycled. 12% has been incinerated, which means it's been burned. 79%, so almost 80%, is put into landfills or simply thrown away. So this is where the source of a real problem for us. We can see various different kinds of plastic. Now, the plastic that we're most familiar with perhaps is the PET bottles. We can see here, and we can see 3 countries, United States, Canada, and Japan, recycling rates here and here. Japan has an 85% recycling rate, which seems really good, but we will be talking about it later. It's not quite as good as it seems. And then we can look down and we see the various types of plastic. So the PET bottle will have a PET 1 on the sign. Perhaps you can't see it here, but it's there. The more different, the harder kinds of plastic, perhaps more difficult to recycle. This is a number 4 here, which is a bit more tricky to recycle well. So various types of plastic and various levels of recycling around the world. Now, of all the plastic we see, this plastic here is still in use. So this is long-term used plastic. This is things that we might see in buildings or in furniture or in transportation. All of this plastic has been thrown away. And as we saw before, 9% recycled, 12% incinerated or burned, and the rest are put in landfills or thrown away. Now, the plastic that we use, the plastic that we use here, 36% is used for packaging. So this is, for example, for wrapping in our bananas, things like that, or for plastic bags, single-use bags. Some here, down here, for electronics, electrical things that we have. In our buildings, we use quite a lot of plastic, 16% of plastics. Transportation here, so in airplanes and trains and buses, is used quite a lot of plastics. Consumer and products, so this would things like straws for drinking, also your iPhone and your computer and your iPad and things like that would also use these kinds of consumer plastics. And this green is textiles, this is clothing, again polyesters and nylons, which contain quite a lot of plastics. And altogether, this comes to about 400 million tons of plastic every year. And how about Japan? Japan produces 9 million tons of plastic waste each year. About 40% of this are bags, packaging, bottles, and food containers. And Japan exports about 1 million tons of plastic waste every year. About 1 million tons goes to other countries. And here's another quiz question for you. How many PET bottles are consumed per capita each year in Japan? Do you remember per capita means each person? Do you think Japanese people use 78 PET bottles a year, 180 PET bottles a year, or 320 PET bottles a year? The answer is 180 PET bottles every year. Japanese people drink a lot of water and juices from PET bottles. And Japan produces about 22.7 billion PET bottles every year. So again, a lot of plastic. And quiz number 2 here, how many single-use plastic bags does each Japanese person use in 1 year? So how many plastic bags do you think you use in 1 year? Do you think it's 150 bags per person, 220 bags per person, or about 300 per person? And the answer is about 300 bags per person. So we'll use a throwaway bag, a single-use bag, about 300 times a year, and we'd throw them away. And together, that is about 30 billion or 50 billion bags every year. Now, we talked before about the recycle rate in Japan, particularly of PET bottles, and we see that the recycling rate is really very good at 85%, but we have a but here. I'm a little confused about what recycling means. Now, I believe that recycling means taking a bottle and recycling it into another bottle. However, in Japan, it is called thermal recycling, which means it is burned in incinerators. So it's not really recycling. Although it is called recycling, thermal recycling simply means taking to an incinerator and burning it, and perhaps using it for heat or electricity. Now, what does Japan do with its waste? Well, we see that a lot is incinerated, it's burned, but another thing is a lot is exported for recycling to other countries, and this is an area that I want to look at now. Where does it go? Well, it goes out of sight, out of mind. Means we throw it away and we forget about it. In fact, it goes to these different countries, and I want to look at this a little bit carefully. It's a little bit difficult to see. This is in the year 2017 on the left, and we can see the USA exported most of its plastic. Japan was number 2, Germany number 3, UK, France, Italy again. So the rich countries are exporting plastic to poorer countries. And we can see down here in 2017, China took a huge amount of exported plastic, and also Hong Kong, which we can assume is the same as China. So most of the plastic from Japan was going to China and Hong Kong, and then some to Malaysia and to these other countries. However, at the end of 2017, China said, no, we are not going to take any more of the world's plastic. And so all of the rich countries had to decide what to do with the plastic, and these are the figures for 2018. So the China and Hong Kong went down to almost zero here, and most plastic from the USA and most plastic from Japan went to Malaysia, also from Germany to Malaysia and to other countries, to Malaysia, to Vietnam, to India, Taiwan, etc., etc. And Japan sent quite a lot of plastic to Thailand too. So the patterns changed. We can also see that the USA exported less plastic, Japan exported less plastic, but this was a big problem. What do you do with the plastic that you have in your own country? And it's still a large problem and has not yet been settled. The countries that take our plastic garbage, we can see Malaysia is the top, Thailand, Vietnam, Hong Kong, and at the bottom, the USA. Most of these countries are not rich, and these are the exporters, as we've seen, the United States, Japan, Germany, UK, Belgium, the rich countries exporting. And unfortunately, the poorer countries that we export our plastic to do not have good facilities for treating plastic waste. So again, this is a huge problem. We send the plastics to these poorer countries, but they cannot manage a good job with the plastics. This picture on the left, this is from Malaysia. You see a big mountain of plastic being washed into the water. Then it goes into the rivers, and of course, then it gets washed into the sea. Now, how much plastic goes into the sea every year? It's estimated that there are 150 million tons of plastic in our oceans. Again, that's altogether since the 1950s. And about 8 million tons are added to this every year. Now, this figure of 8 million, recently the Pew Research Group have done more research, and they think it's more like 11 million tons of plastic going into the oceans every year. And the plastic that goes into the oceans comes in different sizes. We have what's called megaplastic, which is these giant pieces of plastic, macroplastic, about the same size as a dog, mesoplastic or mesoplastic at the same size as an ant. Now, a little bit difficult to see, microplastics, which maybe you've heard of, much smaller. This is the size of a very small insect. And then nanoplastics, very, very small. This is the same size as the coronavirus. So these are very, very small pieces of plastic, all going into the sea. The larger pieces of plastic cause very serious problems. This is a baby bird. It's a baby albatross on the island of Midway in the middle of the Pacific. Its parents fly out over the sea looking for food, and they find plastic, which they think is food, and they feed this plastic to their babies, and the babies die. And this is happening in many, many cases. And if you visit Midway Island, you can see thousands and thousands of baby birds dead because they've been eating plastic. Plastic in fishing nets is also a big problem. Sometimes fishing boats have problems, and so they'll just cut the nets, and the nets go into the sea and they catch animals. So this is a turtle caught in a net. This is a seal caught in a net, and it's killing many, many animals. Turtles also believe that plastic bags are food. They think they're jellyfish, and they eat them, and as a result, they die. Another problem is whales. Whales eat plastic. Now, this is not very clear, but we can see that we have, these are all plastic bags that have been eaten by a whale, and the whale has died. So these are 80 plastic bags taken from the stomach of a dead whale in Thailand. And also in Norway, Indonesia, the Philippines, and other countries, they've been finding dead whales, and inside the whale's stomachs, they find many plastic bags. Huge amounts of damage being done in these countries. And now, here we are. Here's a picture of plankton. And what is it eating? This is the plankton. This green material is microplastic. And if you go to YouTube, you can see, you can find this on YouTube as a movie. You can see the plankton eating the plastic. And then, of course, small fish will eat the plankton, bigger fish will eat those fish, and then we will eat the large fish, and we get plastic in our bodies. And so there's microplastic on land too, in the air, all around us in the air. It contains microplastics going into our bodies. And microplastics have been found everywhere on Earth, at the North and South Poles, on top of the mountains in the Alps and Himalayas. Absolutely everywhere in the world we can find microplastics. And also from our laundry, when we wash our clothes have a lot of microfibers in them, what we call microfibers, very small pieces of plastic. And when we put them into the washing machine, they go down into the drains and finally into the sea. Now, if you have 6 kilograms of washing of acrylic material, it will produce this many. In one wash, it will produce this many, 728,000 pieces of microfiber. Polyester, again, 6 kilogram, 1 6 kilogram wash will produce this amount of microfiber, and polyester and cotton will produce this amount. Now, the average person releases about 300 million polyester microfibers per year by doing laundry, and 900 million to the year just by wearing their clothes. So just by walking around every day, microfibers fly off into the air and cause some damage. There are plastic microfibers in our carpets, if it's plastic curtains, furniture, pillows, plastic bottles. We breathe microplastics, we eat microplastics, we drink microplastics. Microplastics in a PET bottle are more than double the amount of microplastics that you get from drinking plain water. In 1 week, we eat about 4 to 5 grams of plastic. So this is about a credit card every week. So we take a credit card and we eat it, and it tastes delicious, but I think, is it healthy? Maybe not. We have microbeads as well. Now, microbeads are found in shampoos, cosmetics, soaps, toothpaste. And before 2017, this amount of microbeads, this number of microbeads, were produced in the USA every day. So huge, huge number. Now, this was before 2017. Now, in the United States, some states have banned the use of microbeads, so little by little, there are not so many. However, many countries have not banned microbeads, and so they're still going into the oceans. So what can we do? Well, one of the answers is we use less plastic, especially single-use plastics. So we can use fewer shopping bags, and it's very clear in Japan now more and more people, in fact many people, are now using eco bags, which they can use again and again. Plastic straws, we don't really need to use plastic straws when we drink our drinks. Some chain restaurants in Japan have now stopped using plastic straws. We need to use plastic straws less and less. PET bottles, more and more people are bringing their own bottles with them, not using the plastic bottles. And also plastic packaging. When we go shopping, we don't have to buy everything wrapped in plastic. In fact, around the world, some countries are banning plastic bags, so no use of plastic bags. Interestingly, particularly in Africa, because they cannot recycle them, they do not have good facilities, so they say no more plastic bags, you must find something else. The blue countries have banned plastic bags. The purple countries are putting a charge or a tax, so you have to pay money. For example, in Japan, if you want a plastic bag, you have to pay money. Other things that are helping are technology. PET bottles, for example, these bottles are lighter. They don't use as much plastic as they used to. They're making the plastic much thinner and lighter, and so they're using less plastic. Coca-Cola, who produce 117 billion bottles a year, have a 50% recycled material in the bottles by 2025. It's something called plant bottle, and 7% around the world of Coca-Cola bottles, plastic bottles, are now made of what they call plant bottle. However, this kind of material, even this kind of plant bottle material, is difficult to recycle. It's not a magic answer to the plastic bottle problem. And another thing, again in Japan, this is a Japanese company making plastics, what's called biodegradable. I think you can see from the pictures that little by little they break down and can be used for compost. Okay, so this is one other technology that might help. Another example of using biodegradable plastic is using corn starch to make a particular kind of plastic, and the chain 7-Eleven is now using a mixed plastic and biodegradable plastic, so you can see this mark botanical film is used in the rice balls, the onigiri. Also, bioplastics are going to be a big thing in future, using plants or wood or compost to mix with plastic to produce other kinds of plastic. Again, it's not a magic answer. There are various problems even in recycling these types of plastic. Also, collecting garbage from the oceans. There are many programs, particularly in the Pacific, where there's a lot of garbage, collecting the larger pieces of garbage from the ocean and recycling it or incinerating it. A big and rather famous project is called the Ocean Cleanup Project, where they have this huge, what they call a boom, collecting the plastic, and then they'll pick up the plastic and take it for recycling. They hope to cut the plastic in the Pacific by 50% in 10 years. We certainly hope so. And of the future, some interesting technology, plastic-eating bacteria. In 2016, some scientists in Kyoto found a bacteria that could eat PET, which was very interesting. But of course, bacteria work very, very slowly. However, from this, various international teams have developed an enzyme, which is called PETase, which can work 100 times as fast. And so little by little, this is just, again, a very small start, but little by little, we can develop these technologies that might be able to manage our plastic waste. Another thing, in the EU, they have a thing called the multi-cycle project, particularly the Fraunhofer company in Germany is producing a system that can recycle plastic. Now, many plastics, if we look here, are combinations of different types of plastic, and these are very, very difficult to recycle. Now, this company in Germany and also in Spain, the Cirque company have a thing called Polinspire, which can take these mixed plastics and separate them and then put them in various areas for recycling. So this is, again, the move of the future. Finally, in conclusion, when we look at our family back in the 1950s, they seem very happy. Their lives seem to be quite convenient. However, we today cannot imagine our lives without plastic. However, we can imagine our lives with less plastic. We can consume plastic, and that's not a problem, but the problem is we over-consume plastic. So we really need to remember where our plastic is going, how it is being used, and whether we can find things instead of plastic to use in our lives. And if we do so, we'll make the world a better place for ourselves, for our children, and for our grandchildren. Thank you for watching. See you again.